What if I told you, the words that could change your entire life are the same words that once saved a broken heart? It started like every love story does, with hope, with dreams, and with a belief that this time, everything would be different. I remember standing there, looking into someone's eyes, thinking I had finally found my forever. But life has a way of rewriting our stories when we least expect it. There was a moment when everything fell apart. The late-night calls stopped, the laughter faded, and suddenly, silence became louder than anything we had ever shared. And in that silence, I found myself lost, not just without them, but without me. One night, scrolling endlessly, trying to escape my own thoughts, I came across a simple quote: "Sometimes you have to lose someone else to find yourself." And for the first time, I stopped running from the pain. I sat with it, I felt it, and I realized, maybe this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was the beginning. Love has a strange way of teaching us. It gives us everything, and then sometimes, it takes everything away, just to show us what truly matters. I learned that love isn't about holding on tightly to someone else, but about holding yourself together when everything else falls apart. Another quote found me when I needed it the most: "You deserve the love you keep trying to give to everyone else." And that hit differently, because I had spent so much time pouring into someone else that I forgot to pour into myself. I forgot that I, too, was worthy of the same patience, the same kindness, the same deep, unconditional love. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, I started rebuilding. Not for them, not for anyone else, but for me. I started to understand that every heartbreak carries a hidden message. Every goodbye carries a lesson. And every tear carries strength. Then came another realization, wrapped in a simple line: growth begins when comfort ends. And suddenly, everything made sense. The pain wasn't there to break me. It was there to shape me. To push me into a version of myself I had never met before. And one day, without even realizing it, I smiled again. Not because someone new walked into my life, but because I finally walked back into my own. That's when I understood the most powerful quote of all: the right person will never make you question your worth. And more importantly, the right version of you will never allow it again. So this isn't just a love story about losing someone. It's a love story about finding yourself. It's about understanding that the most life-changing quotes aren't just words, they're mirrors. They reflect who we are, who we were, and who we are becoming. And maybe, just maybe, the love you've been searching for in someone else has been waiting inside you all along. Love didn't begin the day I met them. It didn't start with a smile, or a conversation, or even the moment our hands first touched. What I thought was the beginning was only a chapter in a story that had already been unfolding inside me for years. Because the truth is, love begins long before two people find each other. It begins the moment you start discovering who you really are. I used to believe love was about finding someone who completes you, someone who fills the empty spaces inside your heart. And when I met them, I thought that emptiness finally had a name. I poured everything into that connection, every emotion, every hope, every piece of myself that I didn't yet understand. But somewhere along the way, I got lost in the idea of us, forgetting the importance of me. There were parts of myself I had never explored, dreams I had buried, fears I had ignored, and insecurities I had disguised as love. I thought giving more would fix everything, that loving harder would make things last forever. But love doesn't work that way. You can't build something real on a foundation you haven't fully understood within yourself. It was only after things started falling apart that I was forced to face the person I had been avoiding. In the quiet moments, when there was no one else to distract me, I started asking questions I had never asked before. Who am I without them? What do I truly want? What makes me feel alive, not just attached? Self-discovery is not a beautiful, effortless journey. It's uncomfortable, raw, and sometimes painful. It strips away illusions and forces you to confront truths you've been running from. But in that process, something powerful begins to take shape. You start to see your worth not through someone else's eyes, but through your own understanding. I began to realize that love isn't about losing yourself in someone else, it's about knowing yourself so deeply that no matter who walks into your life, you never abandon who you are. The more I discovered myself, the more I understood what I deserved, what I needed, and what I would never settle for again. Because real love doesn't start with finding the right person. It starts with becoming the right person for yourself. There are moments in life when time keeps moving, but your heart feels stuck in the same place. Days pass, weeks go by, and people tell you that time will heal everything. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes, time only teaches you how to live with the pain, it doesn't always take it away. I remember those quiet nights when everything felt heavier than it should. The memories didn't fade, they replayed themselves over and over again. Every word that was said, every promise that was broken, every "I love you" that once meant everything now echoed differently. And no matter how much time passed, the feeling remained, like a scar that refused to disappear. It was in one of those moments, when silence felt unbearable, that I turned to words, not conversations, not explanations, just simple words written by someone who had once felt the same way. I came across a line that said, "Some wounds are not meant to be erased, only understood." And something shifted inside me. Words have a strange kind of power. They don't change what happened, they don't rewrite the past, but they give meaning to emotions we struggle to explain. They sit with you in your darkest moments and tell you that what you're feeling is real, that it matters, that you're not alone in it. There were days when I couldn't express what was inside me, but a single quote could say everything I couldn't put into words. It felt like someone had reached into my heart, taken the chaos, and turned it into something I could finally understand. And in that understanding, there was a quiet kind of healing. I began collecting these words, holding on to them like pieces of light in the middle of darkness. Each one carried a different lesson, a different perspective, a different kind of comfort. Some reminded me to let go, others reminded me to hold on, but all of them reminded me to feel, instead of running away from it. Because sometimes, healing doesn't come from forgetting or moving on quickly. Sometimes, it comes from facing what hurts, giving it a voice, and allowing yourself to sit with it until it no longer controls you. And in those moments, when time feels like it's not enough, the right words can reach places that time never could. Life doesn't always change through big decisions or dramatic moments. Sometimes, it shifts quietly, almost invisibly, through something as simple as a single sentence that reaches you at exactly the right time. A quote you weren't even looking for, a line that appears when you feel most lost, and suddenly, something inside you begins to move in a different direction. I remember feeling stuck between holding on and letting go. My heart was pulling me toward the past, replaying memories that once felt like everything, while my mind was trying to convince me to move forward. It felt like standing at a crossroads with no clear path, afraid that whichever direction I chose would lead to regret. And then, in the middle of that confusion, I read a quote: "You can't start the next chapter of your life if you keep rereading the last one." It didn't shout. It didn't force me to change. But it stayed with me. It followed me into my thoughts, into my quiet moments, into the spaces where I was still holding on to what used to be. There was something about those words that made me pause. Not because they solved everything, but because they made me see my situation from a distance. I realized I had been living in memories instead of creating new moments. I had been choosing familiarity over growth, even if that familiarity was painful. The right quote doesn't change your life instantly. It doesn't erase the emotions or make the decisions for you. What it does is gently guide your perspective, like a small push in a direction you were too afraid to take on your own. It gives you clarity when everything feels clouded, and courage when everything feels uncertain. After that, I started noticing how certain words would find me exactly when I needed them. Each one felt like a quiet reminder that I wasn't as lost as I thought. That maybe, deep down, I already knew the direction I needed to go, I just needed something to help me trust it. And slowly, without even realizing it, I began to take small steps forward. Not because everything was clear, but because I was finally willing to stop standing still. There are things no classroom can teach you, no lecture can explain, and no book can fully capture, and love is one of them. You can read 1,000 pages about relationships, listen to endless advice, and still not understand what love truly means until you feel it, until you live it, until it changes you in ways you never expected. When I first fell in love, everything felt simple. It felt like happiness was easy, like all the answers were right in front of me. I thought love was about the good moments, the laughter, the long conversations, the way everything seemed lighter when they were around. And for a while, that was enough to make me believe I had understood it. But love doesn't just show you its beauty. It also reveals your fears, your insecurities, and the parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. It puts you in situations where emotions run deeper than logic, where decisions aren't always clear, and where your heart and mind don't always agree. I learned patience in the moments when I wanted immediate answers but had to wait. I learned vulnerability when I had to express feelings I wasn't sure would be understood. I learned trust not just by giving it, but by risking having it broken. And when things didn't go the way I had imagined, I learned something even more difficult. I learned how to let go. No book could have prepared me for the weight of those moments. No advice could have fully explained what it feels like to give your all to something and watch it change, or even slip away. But within that experience, there were lessons that stayed with me in a way nothing else ever could. Love taught me that not everything is meant to last forever, and that doesn't make it meaningless. It taught me that sometimes people come into your life not to stay, but to shape you, to teach you something about yourself that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. It showed me the importance of boundaries, of self-respect, of understanding when to hold on and when to walk away. And even in the pain, there was growth, quiet, slow, but undeniable growth that changed the way I saw myself and the way I would love again. I used to think love was about staying the same for someone, being everything they needed, adjusting, sacrificing, and holding on no matter what. I believed that if you truly loved someone, you would do anything to keep them, even if it meant losing parts of yourself along the way. But life has a quiet way of teaching you that real love doesn't ask you to shrink. It asks you to grow. There came a moment when I realized I wasn't the same person I used to be. Not because I wanted to change for someone else, but because everything I had been through had slowly reshaped me. The heartbreak, the confusion, the unanswered questions, they all left something behind. Not just pain, but awareness. I started noticing the difference in how I saw things. The way I understood my emotions, the way I responded to situations, the way I valued myself, it all began to shift. And for the first time, I didn't see change as something to fear. I saw it as something necessary. There's a quote that stayed with me during that time: "You can't grow and stay in the same place at the same time." And it made me realize that growth often requires distance, from people, from habits, from versions of yourself that no longer serve you. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it rarely is. Growth means choosing yourself even when it feels unfamiliar. It means walking away from what once felt right but no longer aligns with who you are becoming. It means accepting that outgrowing someone doesn't erase what you shared, it simply means you're moving forward. And that's where I understood something deeper about love. The most powerful form of love isn't just about connection, it's about evolution. It's about becoming better, not just for someone else, but for yourself. Because when you grow, you don't just change your life, you change the way you love. You stop settling for less than you deserve. You stop chasing validation. You start building something real, something grounded in self-worth and clarity. And even if the person you once loved is no longer part of your journey, the growth they inspired becomes a part of who you are forever.